Hello, this is David R. Becker with BeckerArt, and we're here today to show you a little bit about tracing paper and how to use a monitor to use it as a light box. This monitor is just a normal monitor for a computer that I got from a Goodwill store, probably like $4.99 I think I got it for. And what I'm going to do is use it as a light box, and I'm going to put the image onto this tracing paper. Tracing paper is a thin vellum type of thing, and I have two different types that I'm using here. I've got the parchment and I've got the other chart pack, and it's basically a thin sheet of paper that you can put over and see and draw an image onto from like an image like this from a printer in a black and white. But a lot of people have told me that they can't do that with their printer or whatever because they can't get it big enough. So what I want you to do is take and use the monitor. So to take the monitor, I take this image and I just double click on it, and basically you're using this as a computer generated image on your screen. And what I want to do is to use the tracing paper over top of this, and to make this image bigger and smaller, you can usually follow your directions on your computer. Basically, you're going to double click the fixture and then you apply the tracing paper over it. But since that's too big, or the tracing paper is too big, you can just pull the corner, take the corner and pull it out as you would. Now it's not making it bigger, it's making the image bigger, but then what I can do is there's a little magnifying glass on the actual printer, and then that will make it a little bit bigger, and basically you just pull it back and forth to see it if it can be made bigger for the tracing paper. And remember, you want the paper, the image, to be the size that you're going to be then transferring it to your watercolor paper. So here I just take the image and I go back and forth and try to make it the size of the tracing paper. Remember that this is not going to ruin your screen because you're just going to be using a pencil, and the pencil then you'll just sketch up the drawing of the image onto the tracing paper. And again, just use a pencil, just something that is not that hard so you don't ruin your monitor. You don't want to scratch your monitor. It is like a plastic, but don't worry about that. You can just take real lightly, take your pencil and just outline is whatever you can for that you need to then again transfer to your paper, watercolor paper. The watercolor paper will have to be done with the transfer from last week's newsletter. I had done how to transfer the paper or transfer the image, which was the actual print, and then you would transfer that to the paper. Well, here first what I have to do is I have to trace it once and then trace it again. So that's the only problem, but it's for the people who can't do their printer and can't get their printer to do it at a bigger size, or they don't want to take it to a printer and get the size black and white done. So basically it's a tip to take your monitor and then use it as a tracing light box. And so here I go, just tracing the outer edge of the image, and you can make it dark enough, it's fine. Later on you can actually trace over this part again with a pen so that you have a little bit of difference, because this is one thing, the only thing that the problem is that you have to do it twice. You have to trace twice, but it's a way of getting around if you don't have a printer that will print it up for you, or if it's just you don't want to do it as a print. Next, with your monitor, with your paper being done and sketched out, you would then take and use the transfer paper, this black transfer paper, which you can find in my last week's video on how to use it. It's transfer paper, and you take your paper, watercolor paper, and you apply the transfer paper over that just like you would if this was now a photograph. You put the darker part down, and then you lay your image, which you normally would lay your image down, but now I'm laying my transfer that I just did on tracing paper, and I will press on to that tracing. If this black transfer paper isn't available for you, then you can take your tracing paper and apply graphite over the back of the paper and use that as a transfer paper. Also, some people like to take and use the thin, very thin watercolor paper, like a 90 pound, and sometimes it will show through an image a little bit, but that can sometimes be a way of you also using the watercolor paper as a almost like a tracing paper, and you can see through it. But that I don't recommend because it's a little bit harder to see. You just see a faint image of the image on your screen. So that the image being on your laptop, and if you need to have a certain size, find yourself a ruler and just measure, and then use your, again, the gauge to gauge the magnifying of the image to the paper that you're going to be working on. For any more tips, go to my website at BeckerArt.net, and you can pick up much information on anything that's happening in my life with the arts here. And if you want to see my YouTube, go to this button right here at YouTube. That'll be my YouTube channel. And if you want to get my newsletter, just come down here or contact me. But my newsletter you can get by signing in here your email and your name, and you can get an email every Tuesday with my newsletter that has a lot of these tips, and I use these tips in the newsletter, and you'll see week by week. So everybody, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.